Okay, ma'am. Okay. Sure, ma'am. Thank you. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah. And sharing here. Yeah, yeah, this is. Oh, thank you. Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you are listening. This is Vijay Kumari
Good
in Barla.
afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you able to hear me? Hello. Okay, fine. So
Good
today,
afternoon.
good
Yes,
afternoon.
ma'am.
Good afternoon. So today we are dealing with the course 6 in your second year, and the course title is Indian Writing in English. Hello. So, Indian Writing in English. This course has been divided into 4 blocks, and each unit is divided into 6 units. So, altogether, we are going to have 24 units in this course. And you are going to appear for the examination, external examination for 100 marks, and 70 marks for external examination, and 30 marks for your assignments that you are going to submit in this course period. Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Am I audible to you? Okay. So
Hello.
let us start our class with the introduction of Indian writings in English. So, what is Indian English
Yes, ma'am.
literature? Yeah. So, for your information, Indian English literature or Indian writing in English, both are same. So, why we use this term, Indian writing in English? For example, as you have come to second year, in first year, you might have gone through many types of literature. There are many types of literature, many kinds of literature from each country and each area throughout the world. For example, British English literature, American literature, African literature, Canadian literature, Australian literature, etc. And Indian English literature is also one of them. Even though all these literatures are written in the same language, these have a different type of characteristics. They may vary in its theme, style, background, literary movements, and subject matter, style, and so many variants may be there based on its cultural background. It may pertain to its civilization, people's lifestyle, and the professions they do, culture, religion. All these may affect the type of literature. So, now we are coming to our topic, that is Indian writing in English. So, initially, when British came to India, obviously English stepped on the India land. So, there were two types of writers. Historians divided them into, say, two kinds. That is, as I'm giving, Anglo Indian literature and Indo Anglian literature. So, Iyengar defines this Anglo Indian literature as a literature written by Englishmen on theme and subject related to India. So, this is that what you can understand from this Anglo Indian literature is Englishmen or people from England or European countries who wrote on Indian country, India, and on its culture, religion, or maybe people's lifestyle, political background, or any social kind of a strata. So, the literature produced on this kind of themes background is said to be Anglo Indian literature. And the second one is Indo Anglian literature, that is, Indians who wrote on India and its subject and themes from India through English language. This is Indo Anglian literature. So, don't get confused between Anglo Indian and Indo Anglian. You just remember the names. Anglo means that is English, Indo is Indian. So, Anglo Indian literature and Indo Anglian literature. So, now today we are calling the literature of India, which is produced in India, is Indian writings in English and Indian literature, Indian English literature. So, Indian English literature, this is termed IEL, or Indian writing in English, IWE, can be defined, that is, Wikipedia defines this as the body of works by authors in India who write in English and native language or their co-native language could be one of the numerous languages India. And we can also define this as M.K. Nayak in his book A History of English Literature. He defined Indian writing in English as Indian English literature as literature written originally in English by authors Indian by birth or ancestry or nationality. So now you can understand, I mean, you may have an idea what is exactly Indian writing in English. So, well, any writings or produced under this category has many great writers. So, for example, say instance, early writers, there are many early popular writers. They are Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Henry Louis, Vivian Derozio, Michael Madhusudan Dutt, Rabindranath Tagore, Aurobindo, R.K. Narayan, Mulkraj Anand, Raja Rao, Sarojini Naidu, Gandhi, Nehru, and there are many popular writers. So, these writers they wrote in English and they Indianized English. That means they customized English language according to the needs of Indians. And there are many themes. Say, for instance, taking consideration into the political, cultural, religious, educational backgrounds, these writers explored India to bring into the sight of the world. They developed Indian English literature to a good stand that everybody can read today Indian English literature. So there are many, many reasons why India has these many writers. Hello, hello, hello. So let us r- discuss about background of India. As you know, approximately 44 races invaded India. So today, the secular democratic India wasn't the same before independence. Many races invaded India. You say Priorians, Aryans, French, Dutch, English, and all these Chinese, Mongolians also invaded India. So obviously, when they came to India, they leave behind their mark, their impression in our culture, language, religion, social strata. All these affected the lifestyle of Indians. So when Britishers came to India, they see India as a dark country. They call India as dark. Why? Why they call India a dark country? Because Indians are affected with the superstitions. Our Vedic texts, our religion texts, our religion, our society, the people who ruled India, all these are filled with metaphysical objects, myths. So they thought all these superstitions are dark. Dark symbolizes ignorance. So, what is dark? Ignorance. So, they thought Indians are ignorant because we don't know any science. And the science and the technology and the knowledge that already we had are seemed to be useless, effortless, meaningless to Britishers. So they call this as a dark country. And before independence, the society of India was different. Of course, there was a unity, but there were many diversities in India, throughout India. We have many languages, we have many cultures, we have many religions. All these affected India. So, obviously, the early period writers started translating our ancient sacred texts into English. So that was the religion produced during the early period of Indian English literature. And later, they started writing poetry, novel, diaries, journals, autobiographies. All these came into existence. You can say these are all the genres of Indian English literature in the early period. And great writers like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Gurajada Apparao, Rabindranath Tagore, Derozio, Toru Dutt, Michael Madhusudan Dutt, all these things you take into consideration as a social reformers. Raja Ram Mohan Roy basically was a trade person, but he started Brahma Samaj to educate Indians. And he was greatly influenced by the European, the Western education. Why? Because by the time English has entered into India, Europe has already a developed country. They have developed civilization, and science is developing in the West. But whereas in India, there is no importance given to science, and society has many ailments, like you have a class struggle, you have a caste ladder, and there were many superstitions and malpractices and evil practices which are prevailed in the Indian society. So Raja Rammohan Rai stood against all these evil traditions. For example, child marriage, sati. So you know what is sati. So when a husband dies, the wife was burnt along with the corpse of her husband. So he saw this as a very, very evil practice. And child marriage is also another problem. It's a big problem because the youth, younger generation, has been suffering from many generations. So children were married at very early age, and they weren't given any opportunity to be educated, to have their own life, and all these things, they suppressed the development of the society. So Raja Rammohan Rai, he stood against all these. And Gurjada Apparao, he wrote Kanya Sulkam. So in that, what was Kanya Sulkam is about? It is a play about the evil practice which had been practiced in the society. Kanya Sulkam, that is the dowry given to girls' parents, that is bride's parents at the time of marriage. So obviously poverty, social evils, all these related things or were influenced on the society. Girls' parents, that means the bride's parents, used to take money from the bridegroom, and they used to give in return their child to the bridegroom at a very early age. So there is women oppression. Women were not given any equal chance along with men. Women weren't allowed to get education, any equal rights, equal right politically, economically, socially, religiously, everything in all aspects, women were suppressed. And one more big ailment is that caste system. So they were deeply influenced by Manu's dharma, and so there were the four kinds of, as you are very well aware of that, the four things, that is Brahmana, Kshatriya, Shudra, Vaishya, all these ladders. So there was no equality in the society. So professions were divided according to the families. They were not given a chance to select their own interested profession. So, this is the situation of Indian society. So, these people thought that we too had very great culture and civilization, knowledge, wisdom from our ancestors, but this should be changed. This should be changed. So, what was the hope? Was the only thing is Western education. So, Western education is possible only through the language of West, that is English. Because by that time, already Britishers invaded almost all parts of the world. So, English became a universal language. English has been developing. So, obviously, English gained the popularity. Before English, Greek, Latin, all these languages used to be more patronized by the writers. But when the advent of science has stepped into human civilization, it has changed everything. Science has been given importance. New scientific investigations are given importance. Industrialization, a kind of globalization, started in the early 70s and 16th and 17th centuries. So these things became the themes of the Indian English literature. Okay, we'll go to next slide. Hope you're able to see my screen. So here goes. You have 4 blocks. Let us have a brief look at our syllabus that we are going to deal. The entire syllabus is divided into 4 blocks, and each block has been divided into 6 units. So we're dealing with the first block today, and we'll go through units 1 and 2 in this session. So there is a brief introduction, and you have unit 1 and unit 2, unit 3, unit 4, unit 5, and unit 6. So unit 1 is Vennela Kanti Subbarao's report on education. Unit 2 is T.B. Macaulay's minutes. And unit 3 is Torudat's from ancient ballads. And unit 4 is Saguna by Krupabhai Satyanandan. And unit 5 is Gurajada Apparao's Kanyasulkam. And unit 6 is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's Buddha or Karl Marx. So, here I just want to mention one point that all these texts or unit is divided in a such a way that there is a chronological order inside the division. That means maybe the work's publication date or the writer's age or the time of producing this literary piece. So based on that, the entire syllabus has been divided. And now we are going to deal with the first unit, Vennelakanti Subrau's report on education. So let us go through the author's introduction. So first of all, we look at this author's name. If you observe the spelling, Vennelakanti Subrau. So actually, this is Vennelakanti Subbarao. And we may wonder why this strange spelling of Subrao instead of Subbarao. Because he was a great translator, and interpreter. He worked for Indian government, British government, India, which is under the rule of British government. So he used to translate many texts. He used to work in their office, and he was a favorite of his superiors. And not only that, he has mastered English, Telugu, Kannada, Maharashtra, and Tamil. So he's very well versed in all these languages. And Britishers used to call this person as a Subrao because they could not pronounce exactly Subbarao in Telugu because they don't know the Telugu accent. So I used to call them Subrao. And so on that name, he has published, I mean, he wrote this report to the Madras Presidency's education chief on this name, Subrao. And you can observe the spelling also. This is Vanilla Kanti. Instead of K, they used C. So you can observe the influence of this linguistic and the pronunciation nature of the English authorities. I mean, the English officers, British officers. So actually, this person, Venelakanti Subbarao, belongs to Madras Presidency. Now it is Andhra Pradesh, of course, but at that time it was under Madras, that is Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra Residency, because by the time he was there, the state hasn't been divided. That means Madras and Andhra Pradesh weren't separate states. And he worked for British government as a translator and interpreter. As we have already discussed, he is very well versed in 6 languages. That means he's a polyglot. He served as a member of the Madras School Book Society also. So that's why he wrote a report on the education system of Madras Presidency. That means he observed all the schools, and he deliberately did it because he wanted to have a change in the education system. So he observed many things, and that he mentioned the same in the report. And there are few things that we have to know about this writer. So there are curious facts about this author. That is, the first thing is he has written his autobiography, which is supposed to be the first autobiography ever written in English language. And one more thing is that this Venelakanti Subbarao wrote a report on school education. That means he is the person who has written a report on education even prior to Raja Ramohan Roy's letter to the government, British government general of India. So Subbarao has written this report on 7th August 1820, whereas Raja Ramohan Roy has written report to the Governor General of India on 12th December 1823. That means he submitted his report even 3 years before Raja Ramohan Roy's report. And his autobiography is the first autobiography, and he died in 1839. And so his autobiography was published in 1873 because his son has published this many years later. So this is a very less known fact to all the Indians. And let us go through the summary of the report. As we have already discussed, he has given many details about the Indian educational system. So he says that there was no discrimination among the boys. Particularly, he mentions boys. That means only boys were educated. And he mentioned one more interesting thing is girls who belong to dancing community is going to school. That means all the girls weren't given the opportunity to be educated. So there were many causes, there may be many reasons behind this. So say, so at that time, the social strata, according to the social strata, they may think that they thought that going to school, that means which who belonged to the richer section, they thought it was not a dignified job. So girls who belongs to richer section were not given education. That means there was no equality to the right of education. And one more thing is boys were given education, and there was no discrimination. So he goes on says that education simply understood as reading. That means they were given the practice only to read the given text. They did not understand what they were reading. So they don't have the knowledge of the text, what they are reading. So this is a major threat to the education system, he thought, because they don't know what they are going through. And at the age of 10 or 11, they used to leave the school and they have to enter into their family professions. Whether they are interested in their family professions or not, whether the education what they have received from the school is irrelevant or relevant or useful or not useful, it doesn't matter. Just they simply leave the education school and they used to enter into their family professions. So the education what they have received is not at all useful to their life. So there is no change, and you cannot expect any fruitful change for the future generation. So he thought it should be changed, and he recommended strongly for the development and improvement of such condition. And he says schools should teach some important moral values, and mean that means they should impart some moral values in the young minds. They were given accounts also, the knowledge of accounts also. Sometimes it is useful, sometimes it is not. So he mentions the same in his autobiography that only the English language is taught only for reading. That means the students can read only, they cannot write. As we all know, it is a well known fact that literacy is not just meant for reading. It should also consist how to read and write, how to speak and listen, as we all know. So this is not a complete education. They just want, that means the Britishers want Indians just to read, and they used to take them to read the documents. That's it. They never wanted Indians to have the full knowledge of English language initially. And he goes on say that schools are not teaching grammar. So schools are teaching both vernacular languages as well as English, but they did not teach grammar. So obviously students cannot correct the mistakes of their language what they are speaking. So in spoken and written form they cannot have the ability to correct their language. Only they can read both in vernacular and English. And he emphasizes the use of prose and abridgment of grammar schools. So he emphasizes the use of prose because he thought prose really can help the students to understand the language and the grammar at the same time. So he suggested some abridgment of grammar books, abridged courses, some bridge courses should be introduced into the schools to teach this English language as well as vernacular languages. And he addresses some of the teachers as native. That means he considered himself as English, strangely, because he can speak and speak English very well, and he mastered English language. So he considers himself as an Englishman, and he addresses the rest of the native Indians as native teachers, and they themselves don't have a good grammatical ability to speak English in a proper way, in a correct way. So he has mentioned all these things in his autobiography. So he has presented a very vivid, clear picture of Indian education system before independence and before Macaulay's minutes and the Charter Act of which has changed the Indian education system entirely. So he has reported all these things in his report. So what we have understood in Unit 1, that is the first report of Madras School Book Society on education in schools. So here goes is that you need to remember how the education system is affected the life of Indians, and why only English men has given only the ability to read. That means education which is limited to only for reading. So you need to understand that what was the idea behind this. And let us go to Unit 2. Minute of the 2nd of the February 1835. So this is written by T.B. Macaulay. So this is popularly known as Macaulay's Minutes. So here we have some information about the author T.B. Macaulay. Thomas Babington Macaulay, or Baron Macaulay in full form. Born in October 25th, 1800, Rothley Temple at it is in England, and he was a great essayist and historian, and he has written the history of England. So for this book, he is very popularly known as a great reviewer and an essayist. So here is one more interesting fact about this author is by the time he has entered into India, he was greatly influenced by writings which were wrote on India's political, cultural background, and he had already an idea of how India is going to be, that he is going to visit soon. So he came here with a preoccupied mind that he has not good idea of India. He supported the replacement of Persian by English as the official language, the use of English as the medium of instruction in schools, and the training of English speaking Indians as teachers. So, this is a one more great achievement done by Macaulay, Lord Macaulay, that he is the one who insisted that Persian and Sanskrit should be replaced by English. That means India should become an official language in India. And he trained some of the English teachers, and he appointed those teachers as English teachers in schools. So he wrote extensively, and he's a great reviewer. So he's the friend of Lord Bentinck, who is the Governor General of India, and on his recommendation, so he came to India to become the chief reporter that he had to write a report, that means minutes, to British government. That's why he came to India. So let us have some brief introduction about education in India before Macaulay's Minutes. So this Macaulay's Minutes needs a lot of understanding why this person has to write minutes on education system of India. So what has forced him to take this step? So before that, that means at the time of Britishers came, so what was the type of education system was prevailed in India? Education in India. Before the British rule, education was imparted through, give me a moment. Before the British rule, education was imparted through a chain of elementary schools, that is patashalas, maktabas, and madrasas for higher education. The education provided in such institutions were based on old texts like Vedas and their commentaries. Such education was not considered to be up to date because Vedas, the basis of such education, did not kept pace with the world. So obviously, we have Persia and Sanskrit were the most popular languages and used to be considered as official languages in some of the places in India. And there was no unity because there were many dialects which were prevailed in India. That means there are many languages. For instance, we have Telugu, Tamil, Kannada, Malayalam, and we have many other languages, North Indian languages like Rajasthani and Odia. So many languages are there. So Sanskrit was considered and Persia was considered official languages and most popular languages because there was a lot of literature produced in those two languages. Vedas and some of the ancient texts which are very sacred to the religions of Hindu and Islams were written, and the those languages were gained popularity and were patronized by the writers of the same. Only a particular type of community was given opportunity to go through those texts, and very limited access was there to get education. So people were not given equal opportunity to receive education. It was a luxury. It was a very fanciful thing to the society. Students, those who belong to a particular community, a richer community, a caste-wise, caste-based communities were allowed to receive education. So education was very limited. Literacy rate was very, very low. So you have a drastic change with the entrance of East India Company. As we know, East India Company, when it entered, they started giving education. They started spreading education because they need to develop their trade. So that's why they spreaded the education. So due to colonization of India, education system suffered because the company had stopped giving institutions grants which were earlier given to the institutions by Indian rulers. So before Britishers came to India, kings used to rule. So whoever becomes the king, they used to grant some funds to educational institutions. But when East India Company came, that means Britishers entered and later missionaries entered, they stopped giving funds to these educational institutions. You may get a doubt. Why? Because East India Company has taken over almost all the parts of the country. That means the political power has changed from kings to East India Company. They have occupied, they invaded India, they came for trade, and they developed the language, they spreaded the language. And initially, they have given some charities to the educational institutions, and they have developed English language. They have given employment opportunities those who were well versed in English, and they have taken over the trade of India. Slowly, the political, economical, social, religious areas, realms are gone under the leadership of East India Company, that means Britishers. So, after some period, this East India Company rule and power has taken over by the crown, that means the queen, the royal power. So, let us have a look at Western education emergence into India. You're going to draw a line exactly when it has become the official language and when India started receiving Western education, but slowly and gradually it developed. And Indians were attracted to this Western education because they have developed many scientific advancements and they have a very sound knowledge in physics, poetry, in advanced forms, literature, novel, industrialization, and all these. So, obviously, people were attracted to industrialization, just as we are now getting attracted towards the information age. So, everybody is fancy about these days to computers, computer languages, software jobs, and we have a very new advancement that is IT, all this. So obviously, IT sector has taken over the all the fields of all the sectors of society. Similarly, at those times, industrialization took over almost all parts of the country, almost all parts of the world. Industrialization has brought many changes in the society. Religiously, politically, economically, all these changes were taking place in the world simultaneously in India also. So, introduction of Western education in India was led by following causes. We can say blindly two reasons: East India Company and Christian missionaries. These are the two causes that caused Western education in India. Role of East India Company. So let us discuss the role of East India Company. English East India Company showed a very little interest in promotion of education in India. Why? They have a reason because they want to develop their trade and they want to spread English. The only purpose of setting up some educational institutions in India was to ensure a steady supply of Indians to law courts set up by their company. So obviously, they came here to trade. They started the trade, business, they occupied the market, they started exporting goods from India, and they started importing things which are necessary to India. They have taken over the provinces, kingships, royal courts, markets, economic sector, political sector, to some extent religion sector, everything. So now to establish their business in India, so they wanted some legal advisors. So they employed some lawyers, and they employed lawyers. Later, they established their courts. So in order to help these lawyers and courts, because they didn't know our native language, and if it is one, they could have learned it, they could have mastered it, but we have many. So there was no choice left for them other than to adopt, that means to appoint, to give employment to Indians who mastered the native languages as well as English language. So they started giving education, sometimes free education, to the people who are interested to learn English language. For that purpose, they started to set up some educational institutions. India's knowledge of classical languages was used to establish correspondence with the native states by East India Company officials. So, those people who are mastered in classical languages, so they used to give education, free English education to the same, and they used to give employment opportunities in the courts in order to develop their business. So here is some list. First, educational institutes during East India Company. There are three prominent and very popular colleges: the Calcutta Madrasa College, Sanskrit College, Fort William College. So that is the Presidency College at Calcutta. So the Calcutta Madrasa College was set up in 1781 at Calcutta by Warren Hastings. So the purpose to establish this college was for the study of Muslim law and related subjects. So this is the Calcutta Madrasa College. Madrasa. You might have the information what is madrasa education. So the higher education and the religious education given to Islamists, that is Muslims, and so that is madrasa. So they have established this madrasa at Calcutta because they wanted to please, they wanted to inspire these Muslims. And second one is Sanskrit. This was set up in 1791 at Benares. So by Jonathan Duncan. So this purpose is for the study of Hindu law and philosophy. So this is for Hindu law and philosophy. And the third one is Fort William College. This was set up at Calcutta by Lord Wesley. The purpose is for the training of the civil servants of the company in languages and customs of Indians. So they used to train civil servants. So they used to teach Indians their laws, and English language and Britishers' law, and they used to train these civil servants. After the training and after the examination, they used to employ these civil servants at particular provinces under their leadership. So, these are the three educational institutions, major educational institutions, which were very, very famous and fruitful during the time of East India Company. So, what is the role of these Christian missionaries? So, East India Company has already came. It occupied market. It occupied all the lives of Indians. And what about these Christian missionaries? So, activities of Christian missionaries compelled British to promote Western education in India. So, main English missionaries. There are many missionaries who spreaded religion through English language, and two of them are very popular. They are Charles Grant missionary, William Wilberforce. Christian missionaries wanted to promote Western education in India because they thought that modern education would destroy the faith of the Indians for their own religions, and they would follow Christianity. That is the main motive behind them. So, what was that? Christian missionaries wanted to promote Western education in India because this may influence Indians so that they get distracted from the old rooted religion and the customs, traditions, rituals, which were not helpful in getting livelihood and to have a fruitful position or at least a dignified position in their society. So they targeted such type of communities which were downtrodden, which were treated downtrodden, which were oppressed by the rich classes. The richer sections, the educated sections, they used to look down on such type of communities. They are called untouchables. They are treated very badly. They were not given any type of education. Even sometimes they had to strive for food. They were in dire poverty. So, when these people got education, so they can have employment, they can come into the society, they too can have an equal position, they too have jobs, they can earn, they can live happily, so that the Western education, if the Western education is given to such type of people, a particular sect of people, so they started spreading English. So, in order to spread English, they had to establish some kind of schools or institutions or some type of methods to impart the knowledge of English in the minds of Indians. So, language is the means of communication. Obviously, when they learn English, obviously, for two things, they can detach from their old religion. One, because they were not given the opportunity to read the Vedic texts or the religious texts in the society, which were already predominantly enjoyable, available, accessible to the richer classes. So the poor classes and the discriminated classes, they did not have had the opportunity of learning this section. The Vedic religion texts, Vedic texts or the ancient texts or the sacred texts or the so-called education. So when they read English, when they study in English, obviously they did not have the knowledge of already which is prevailed in the society, so they may attract to a new religion, that is Christianity. So that's why they have started giving education in English. They started some educational institutions in India. Charles Grant. Charles Grant is considered as the father of modern education in India. He is known so because of his efforts that the Charter Act of 1833, this is an important milestone in India's education, that is Charter Act of 1813, came into existence. This act promotes the modern education in India as it sanctions about 1 lakh rupees for education. So they were ready to start Western education, and all of a sudden they cannot import English language at once into the society. They cannot make it to pertain, to persist into the society. So they started and one more plot. What was that? That is, they announced 1 lakh rupees to sanction as a stipend, that is scholarship, to the people who are getting their research or higher education in Arabic and Sanskrit. So Indians were pleased. So this was the main event which led to Macaulay's Minutes. So this Charter Act of 1813, the main idea behind this is to give stipend for Indian scholars who are doing their research and studying English at once. So this became a landmark and the platform to develop a controversy between two kind of people, say two kind of groups, say Anglicist and Orientalists. And obviously this Charter Act of 1813 is a big failure. So let us see why it is a failure. The Charter Act had failed because following reasons. It failed to state the language for medium of instruction for educational institutes. As we have been discussing this fact, India has many languages, local languages, native languages. They are called vernacular languages. So obviously, it is not a single language to promote that particular language. So obviously, there's a fight, there's a tie between all these languages. So if this scholarship should be given, so to which language it should be allotted? And it was also ambiguous about the means of expanding English education in India. Okay, they have decided to spread English in India, but what are the means? By what means they can impart, they can imbibe this English language in the society? That was another dilemma. It was not stated that education should be given to all or a selected few. One more ground is that before this, India Indian education is just not individual or a particular sect. It was mass kind of education. So now it is going to be changed. So what way it is going to be changed? Whether they are going to give education to all the sectors, that means to all castes or all categories, rich, poor, middle class, and all this, or to a particular sect of people, they have decided to give English education, Western education, fine. To which group that they have to give this kind of it, this Western education? So they have a dilemma. if a particular sect of group is given education, India is a large country, and this particular group of educators will not be helpful to their purpose. So, how it should be imparted? Whether the education should be given to all sectors or a particular sect? So, to which language it should be given importance? If it is given importance to already the existed popular languages like Sanskrit and Arabic, what about the other languages who did not know Sanskrit and Arabic? Because much of the Indian population is not at all educated. And what should be the medium of instruction to teach English to the native people? And if this English language should be taught to whom that they have to teach and by whom that they have to spread this education. So all these causes were inexplainable. So this Charter Act became a failure. Now comes to the war between Orientalists and Anglicists. So this Anglicists or Anglicists is a group which supports that English should be the medium of instruction and English should be taught in schools. And Orientalists are agonist to the English education or English as the medium of instruction. I'm repeating, Orientalists are in support of Aboriginal languages like Sanskrit, Persian, and all the vernacular languages like native languages Telugu, Malayalam, Tamil, and all this. Anglicans who are in support of English, and English should be the medium of instruction in schools, and English should be the official language. So, this is a tie between Orientalists and Anglicans. And there are some other people who are supporting Orientalists and Anglicans at the same time because they are attracted towards the East Western education, yet they want to support our native education system. That means they respect their culture, at the same time, they want some modernism in order to develop and in order to learn some new knowledge which is ruling the entire world. So we are fall back, we are very backward. So in order to develop, in order to come out of from the shackles of these superstitions, rituals, blind beliefs, social evils, poverty, caste system, inequality, all these ailments, so one needs to have good proper education. So leaders like Raja Ram Mohan Rai, social reformers like Rabindranath Tagore, all these, they want to support the culture, Indian culture, yet they want to have a complete education in them in modernity. They needed, they expected some modernity in the education system. So there was a debate between Orientalists and Anglicists due to the issue of language for the medium of instruction in India. Orientalists, people who wanted to promote education in India through the medium of classical languages such as Sanskrit, Persian, and Arabic. So actually, India had a very deep roots in Prakrit. Later, the Sanskrit has evolved. And because the Mughals, Nizams, and Arabs, and as well as some Aryans came to India, the Persian and Arabic language has developed, evolved. So it is a mix. So, Orientalists support that we have rich cultural background, we have sound knowledge in this. So, we want to teach education, we want to teach kids in this particular native languages, whereas Anglicus supports English. So these are the people who wanted to promote Western education in India, which supported English as a medium of instruction. The general point of controversy was whether Indians should be given Western education through English languages or indigenous knowledge education through Indian languages. The Orientals stood for mass education, vernacular medium, and indigenous knowledge, while the Occidentals are nothing but Orientalists for Western education through the medium of English for the spreading of European culture and knowledge. So there was a tie between these two groups. So here comes into the main part of our lesson, Macaulay's minutes. So this is the point where Lord Macaulay came to India and he started observing and researching on all the grounds, and he was going to make a historical document, a legal document, a political document, an economical document. That means why I'm giving all these adjectives is that he is going to observe almost all the layers, all the aspects, all the spheres of the society at that time. So, Lord Macaulay's arguments, let us see some arguments and what were his implications, what were his observations, his suggestions, or his recommendations about India's education. So, he compares Indian ancient religious sacred texts, poetry, with Western poetry of John Milton and the metaphysical philosophy of Locke and the physics of Newton. In his argument, that means in his minutes, so first of all, he says that it is useless. That is, what is useless? What is useless? He is saying that it is useless to spend 1 lakh rupees, 1 lakh rupees in order to promote the indigenous languages in India. So if you remember, just 5 minutes back, we discussed about Charter Act 1813. So what was the act? Because the government, British government, was ready to offer 1 lakh rupees for the promotion of education in India. So he is saying that if we have to promote this, already those languages were patronized by very less group of people, and the literacy rate of pertaining to particularly these languages were very less. So obviously it is useless if you are going to spend 1 lakh rupees for this purpose of education. And he says it is useless. And he argues that if you compare the Vedic texts and the Western philosophy, it is useless. That means it is very less. Why it is less? Because, and on at some point of time, he admits that I never studied Indian sacred texts, but I have discussed, I have spoken to the people who are well versed in such texts. So he compares Indian literature, I mean, the ancient Indian sacred texts and the modern English works. That is saying the poetry, because obviously the Vedic texts are almost, it is very, you have not even 10% of the Vedic literature was in prose. Everything was in poetry, poetic form, you know, even the Islams also. So you have poetry much. So verses and the prose was very less. So he says He compared the poetry. And he compares that with John Milton. John Milton is a very great writer. So why John Milton? He compares with John Milton. Why he compares with John Milton? So I think you know this. John Milton's Areopagitica and Paradise Lost is very popular for this. So he says his type of argument, his line of argument is that sacred texts should be read, should be practiced. But if you pertain in Areopagitica, John Milton argues that if you are not allowing the public to read the literature other than the Bible, other than the biblical literature, you are not expecting that type of citizens or that type of education, that type of education is complete. I'll repeat. John Milton, his masterpiece is Paradise Lost and Areopagitica. So in Areopagitica, at the time of Areopagitica, why he has written Areopagitica is it is a masterpiece in his works, and he has written that text particularly when the government, Protestant government, they ban all type of literature which is produced other than Bible. So people should not read that literature. So people should only read literature which is sacred, which is religious, that is biblical. Should be religious, only religious. Other than religious, that means social, economical, political events, moments, everything, whatever it is banned. So Milton has written Areopagitica at the time that he was talking the freedom of press. The freedom of press. So people should be given freedom to read whatever they like, to understand what is the society. What is the society? So he says, in that he mentions an example. I would like to mention that example here also. That suppose you bring a boy into a room and you keep him in that room until he becomes an adult, and you don't give him any type of orientation regarding the society. You're not allowing him to go out to mingle with the peers or peer group and to mingle with the society, to mingle with the family, and you just keep him in the room, you close everything, and when he becomes an adult, when you bring that person out and you show him that particular person to the society, to the world, and if you say this person doesn't know smoking, this person is not an alcoholic, is not a womanizer, he doesn't know any sin, he never committed any mistakes, and if you say the society will accept that person, can you say that that person is really sacred? That means when that person doesn't even know what is smoking, how a cigarette or a tobacco looks like, what it is exactly, what it is even, he never seen in his life ever. So how can you say that he never smokes, he never drinks, he never lies? Because he never given the opportunity to mingle with the society, to mingle with the sinners, to mingle with the whatever the things which are present in the society. So you cannot say that person is sacred, pure. In the same way, if you prohibit people, mankind, from reading or exposing to such type of environment, you cannot call that person as pure. Puritanism, because it is about Puritanism. So Milton argues like that. So he sees, so here Macaulay compares Indian poetry with John Milton's poetry. Are you able to understand? He's comparing. Why he is comparing with John Milton's poetry is here on the on the other side. You are comparing the entire poetry of India, which was produced in only the two major languages, predominant languages, and whereas the opportunity was given to a particular sect of people, and yet that those people who never crossed their borders of India, their country, at least their territory, provinces, and they never read any other texts, and they never allowed to mingle with the other section of the people, and you cannot claim that person as a knowledgeable and wise. So, exactly at this point, Macaulay wants to compare India's poetry with John Milton's poetry. So, you cannot prohibit, you cannot limiticize the access of the population. So, the whatever the knowledge and the wisdom that India had already during its ancestry period. So it is not enough to understand the world outside India. So it is not knowledgeable and it is not valuable. So the he's comparing the knowledge with the John Milton's poetry. And he goes on, argues that this metaphysics, which has become a new trend in the literature with the Indian texts literature, and as well as the physics of Newton, Sir Isaac Newton. So the physics is at its high, science is enjoying its honor, its fame at its height. So if you compare these people, India is nothing. So it is useless, and the goal aim is also useless if you are going to spend 1 lakh rupee on this ancient Indian languages and education. And he says the unsuitability of dialects, unsuitability of dialects, dialect, right? The style of a people, particular sect's accent, right? So what is dialect? Suppose we have Telangana, Andhra, Rayalaseema, like this. So we speak Telugu. People speak a common language, Telugu, and the accent of Rayalaseema is different from the accent of Andhra, and it is different from the accent of Telangana. So the particular sect where the area or the region, the language, style, accent, rhythm. So this is a dialect. So you have many dialects. He meant to say that there are many vernacular languages in India. So to which language that you need to promote? So it is a difficult thing. So obviously he's suggesting that it is useless if you are going to spend 1 lakh rupee on Indian education. It is better. It is useful. It will be useful. And there is a great good market for this English language. And you have employability opportunities if you are going to spend this 1 lakh rupees on the promotion of English language. So he goes on, argues like this. So these are the major observations made by Macaulay in his minutes. These are: English should be the medium of instruction, especially at higher level, as it is the best vehicle of thought and exhibition. So he observed and he suggested and recommended English should be the medium of instruction in schools. The Oriental law institutions should be closed down, and all the law books in Arabic, Persian, and Sanskrit should be translated to English. So, whatever the law, So Vedic texts are is not just which are pertaining to religion, Islam or Sanskrit or Persian or something. They religion is mixed with the political movements also, so administration also. So our texts which were the text which contained the law, that entire text were should be converted into English. The illustration of oriental learning should be used for the promotion of English education. The grants given to the oriental institutions should be stopped in, and it should be diverted to the opening of new English opening schools. All the grants given for education should be utilized for the spread of European literature and science. The aim of education should be developed to develop such personalities who are Indian in blood and color, but English in taste and in opinion, in moral and intellectual. So he thought Indian native languages or the wisdom is not intellectual. So he entirely keeps on argue that English should be given priority. And Macaulay's contribution. Macaulay's minutes helped to wind up all the Oriental and the so called Anglicis controversies, which went on to the field of Indian education on for decades. Macaulay laid the foundation stone of modern education system in India. In a way, it was a demerit, it was a hindrance to the local languages or the vernacular languages, but it developed Indian education system. It unified, it has given a single model or to the to the diverse form of education system which were already there in the India. It has given a new form. He contributed to the spread of science, Western literature and value in India. The spread of English education helped Indians to become acquainted with the latest development in the world and got inspiration for lightening of the political independence. So Indians got the knowledge and power and wisdom to become independent, to be an independent, and India to become an independent India. So that helped the development of education and knowledge. So here are the merits and demerits of Macaulay's minutes. Let us wind up. Merits of Macaulay's minutes: a straightforward policy of education, definite purpose of education, lead to establishment of more English schools, English is accepted as the medium of instruction, promotion of filtration theory. And demerits: lead to the closure of Sanskrit patshalas and Arabic madrasas, caused the setback of Oriental learning. It neglected of local languages. It abandoned mass education, and it opposed Indian culture and religion. So here are the merits and some of the demerits of Macaulay's minutes. So he says that Indian education should be replaced. The old Indian education system should be replaced with a new education, that is English as a medium of instruction, because he says that there is a market for English and there is employability opportunities for English, and through English language they can attain modern knowledge, modern wisdom, and in all the aspects, socially, economically, politically, and knowledge wise, everything that you can learn through English, because already the world has developed, the Western has developed, and it has there were many scientific developments, and there is a one more important age started, that is industrialization. So industrialization has changed many aspects of the world. So in order to go on the pace with the new development, India should learn English, and the medium of instruction should be in English, and the Western education should be imparted in the Indian education system, so that India too can be developed, become a developed nation. And thank you, and we will continue in the next session. Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay, ma'am.